Call the Transportation Public Infrastructure Committee meeting of Monday, May 4th. Looking at the wrong agenda. Monday, June 1st to order. First item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. We've had a recommendation to move the Transportation Master Plan to 3.1 and move the other two down. May I have a motion for approval of the agenda as amended?
So moved.
Second. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Item 2.1, adoption of the minutes of the Transportation and Public Infrastructure Committee meeting of May 4th, 2015. Motion for adoption?
Sure, so moved.
Second. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. We now move on to the new 3.1 Transportation Master Plan. Turn this over to the City Engineer.
Thank you, Chair. The City of Colwood has been working on the Transportation Master Plan with urban systems for the past 18 months. Under the stewardship of our council, our previous council, and Councillor Cullington, and now being shepherded by yourself, of course, Councillor Nault, and this council. Extensive analysis and consultation has been employed in preparation of a plan that will serve as the basis for sound transportation decisions in the coming years. The Transportation Master Plan will be useful for obtaining grants, capturing development amenities, and in fostering good partnerships with other agencies. The plan is ready for review by the committee with the potential for adoption by council to follow. Existing conditions were analyzed and the impacts of current and potential future developments were considered as outlined in the official community plan, as well as known developments underway. Consultation has been extensive and has included Colwood residents, businesses and developers, neighboring local governments, public agencies and regional partners. Consultation with the developers of the Comprehensive Development Zone CD7, formerly known as Capital City Centre, was not possible due to financial difficulties on the part of the previous ownership group. As discussed and approved in this year's budget, this gap in the Transportation Master Plan will be addressed through consultation with the new owners, with a report coming to TMPI committee possibly later this year, as we may discuss. I'd just like to point out that there were three public engagement sessions. They were November 2013 at Royal Roads University, February 2014 at Wanda Fuca Fieldhouse, which was combined with the economic development strategy, and then April 2014 here in these council chambers. Transportation plan forms the basis for the subdivision servicing bylaw, specifically as pertains to sidewalks, bike lanes, vehicle lanes, and boulevards, as well as other road improvements in specific areas. The Transportation Master Plan also provides the background information for a revised project list that will be invaluable in developing the new DCC bylaw. Both of these projects are in the 2015 budget, and upon council adoption of this plan, work will proceed on the DCC bylaw and subdivision servicing standards. I should also point out that even though this plan has not been adopted, we're already employing it, notably on Painter Road, where on page 34, Appendix B, there's talk of what would happen should the school come forward with plans, and they are coming forward with plans, and so we're working with them to coordinate that in a way that benefits the greater good. And the options are that, that this committee recommend that council adopt the Transportation Master Plan, or that this committee does not recommend adoption of the Transportation Plan. Could also make some minor modifications, I suppose, if the committee so chooses. And the recommendation is that the committee recommend to council that the Transportation Master Plan be adopted. And I'd like to introduce Kate Bernias, who's done an excellent job, in my opinion, on this plan. And take it away, Kate.
Thank you, Councillor and the committee. Do I need that?
Is it on? Okay.
Yep. Okay.
Great.
I have a short presentation here today to review, provide a summary of the Transportation Master Plan and give a lot of time for questions or discussion if needed. The role of a master plan is really to provide an overarching, high-level and guiding direction. It informs operational items, policies, programs, and capital and operating budgets. It can also be used for grant applications and to work with developers, as Emmett mentioned. The study process for this project started about 18 months ago. We went from building community awareness and the public consultation phase, I apologize for the small font there, to understanding all the background work that the city has done in terms of sustainability planning, land use planning, and concurrently economic development planning while this plan was underway. There was also deep technical analysis. Transportation modeling took place to look at the vehicle conditions, both currently and in 20 years. And finally developing a plan for the future, looking at strategies and actions and an implementation plan. As mentioned, there was extensive public engagement, workshops, open houses, 2 surveys, the council committee meetings, and a stakeholder advisory committee meeting, and most recently working with partner agencies such as BC Transit to refine the plan. The plan is made up of 5 parts: setting the stage, discussing the process and the purpose of the plan, shaping influences, reviewing previous plans and goals that the council has endorsed, looking at land use, demographics, and travel information, as well as public input, creating an overall direction and vision, including mode targets, which I'll discuss further, strategic direction and action, which are specific plans for land use and travel mode, and then implementation, looking at 10 key projects to really move the plan forward and into reality. So the target, currently 89% of trips in Colwood are made by car, and so this plan has a goal of, by 2038, seeing that reduced to 70% of trips, while getting people to walk, cycle, and take transit to work, to school, and to their other activities. These numbers are based on municipal plans, the official community plan, climate action and sustainability plans, as well as other agency plans, including the Transit Future Plan, endorsed by public input, and meets the vision of Colwood as a vibrant, sustainable community into the future. So the strategic directions and actions are around vibrant centers, looking at current and emerging compact mixed-use centers that are served by multimodal transportation options, livable neighborhoods where people can walk and cycle safely and comfortably and socialize on the street whether they're 8 or 80, increasing the number of walking trips throughout the city by building sidewalks and improving sidewalks and connections to multi-use pathways, cycling, increasing the number of cycling trips by building high-quality infrastructure that connects to multi-use trails such as the Galloping Goose, making it easier to ride the bus by encouraging transit frequency, routing, and facilities, and then complete streets, bringing it all together in design and building roads that accommodate all users regardless of age, ability, or mode of travel. The implementation of this plan, as I said, is 10 key projects that relate to transit, walking, cycling, and streets. And the approach, it includes looking at approaches, working with government and developers to implement the plan, creating a funding strategy to fund the plan over the next number of years, education and encouragement, including wayfinding and marketing opportunities, and then evaluation of the plan. Multimodal traffic counts and a monitoring program is recommended. As Emmett mentioned, there's a lot of development going on in Colwood, and throughout the development of this plan, we looked at the opportunities that were occurring and decided that with finishing off the plan, this would give, and presenting it to council and the committee today for consideration, this would give you information to move forward, to approve a plan, and if you choose, and move forward with the implementation of it, regardless of what development occurs. So recommended next steps, consider the plan, and I'm happy to answer any questions and give more information on details of particular parts of the plan. And then I'll move it to the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions of the presenter, public included? Being none, thank you. Oh, Councillor Day.
There are 10 projects listed in the executive summary, starting with the Colwood Transit Exchange, the Galloping Goose Overpass.
Sorry, Cynthia, what page are you on?
I am on page BI 6.
If you want to.
Oh, right at the beginning.
Right in the beginning of the executive summary, I believe.
I think those are also under priorities, under 5.1, starting on page 173
Okay.
of that main document.
So, sorry, just, I'm concerned with the direction here, invigorate the Colwood Transit Exchange. Not necessarily under our control and hopefully underway. Galloping Goose Overpass, I don't know how we accomplish that. That's under the CRD's control. The Galloping Goose and other multi-use paths, the safe streets, the complete streets, working with the partners, those to me are not projects. So I am looking for a list of specific improvements that we can make to improve our pedestrian and cycling infrastructure while not detracting from the ability of our roads to carry vehicles, because we still need the vehicles. So I'm just wondering if I've missed it, or are there some specifics?
Councillor, I can take that.
Thank you. Emmett?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you for that, Councillor Day. I just wanted to address that, if you don't mind, Kate. I think the Colwood Transit Exchange and the Galloping Goose certainly would benefit from Colwood's participation in making them a priority. If we don't see them as, if our council doesn't see them as a priority, then BC Transit and CRD certainly won't move that forward. And so, but I appreciate your point, Councillor Day. We have, in the appendices, there are a number of different projects or a number of different roads there that are there and spelled out. Obviously, Kelly Road is one that we have very close to starting to build, certainly once we get the funding. And I think your point is well taken. First of all, I'm not trying to say it's not. But I think that this plan gives us a great deal of flexibility in terms of things coming up, such as Painter Road, where once we have something like this in place and a priority comes forward or an opportunity comes forward, we're able to do something with that. That being said, as I said before, you have a point about the priorities. Did you want to add anything to that?
I will go to the public first. Any public questions, comments? Being that, I will bring it to committee. Go ahead.
Through the chair. Is this a working document or the final document?
This is the final document.
Meaning,
to this point.
what I mean is that as we go forward,
Yeah.
can there be things, additions, deletions?
Absolutely. As we've seen in other plans, this is a plan that will be updated. In fact, this year there's an update plan for this plan to do with the Ani development, the former Capital City Centre development. And as Councillor Nault and I were speaking earlier today, I think it would be very important that any major development that comes along will certainly be we will certainly pull projects out of this to be addressed by that development. But if there are any changes that occur, that will result in an update to this plan as well. So the plan will be kept current and living.
The Western Exchange, the way I see it, it's already overbuilt. There's too many people there, and they're parked all up Ocean Boulevard. It has to be expanded. The other one is the Galloping Goose. Is there any consideration given to putting,
Yeah, you're on.
it's on? Is any consideration given to run it by Aldine? Because it crosses there as well.
There is consideration in the plan to upgrade the traffic signal at Aldine and also upgrade the traffic signal at Whale and Wilford. Yeah, that's right. Whale and Wilford as part of a package of doing the overpass. But to do 3 overpasses over those 3 intersections would be prohibitively expensive.
You mean a bridge too far?
It might be a bridge too far, yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Further questions from committee? Go ahead.
Not so much. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Not so much questions, but some comments. I'm going to put my cycling committee helmet on here. We just had our cycling committee meeting and went through this draft as well. And so I'll focus a little bit on the cycling provisions here. What the committee found in that meeting was that there are some inconsistencies in the map on page 101. And we also found the map, I mean, it has been increased in size from the last version, but the committee was very strong in saying that these sorts of items need to be really readable, and especially from a grant application perspective. We want, I mean, one of the aims of this document is to have it assist the city in getting grants. If we've got a map where, you know, the street names are not evident right on the map, where you know, connectivity is not evident right on the map, and what it's connecting to and from, it's going to be more difficult to make those sort of grant applications, and then we might need supplementary maps. My understanding is that, you know, with this kind of a document, that's, you know, obviously a lot of time has been taken over this. It would be nice if this were the document we were relying on for grant applications. Cycling Advisory Committee's feeling was that making applications, for example, on bicycle network proposals based on what we have in here wouldn't be sufficient. We also, in that committee, thought that from a public consumption perspective, this document is still somewhat unwieldy. Not necessarily so much in how big it is. I mean, it's a big document because it's covering a lot of ground. But from an online perspective and from a readability online perspective, being able to break this thing into sections, or having perhaps a table of contents that then references the sections and links to the section you want to go to would be much more user-friendly. And we had various comments, not just from committee members, but also from members of the public, that trying to look at and review this thing online was quite difficult. And I think the fact that it's such a tome is also spoken to by the fact that I don't have a recent version of it. I don't have the most recent version. So, you know, and that's because we don't want to print off so many because it's so darn big. So we have to be able to negotiate this thing very easily, and so do other people. And that means the general public need to be able to negotiate it very easily. And it also means that if we're submitting this for grant applications, that those people need to be able to breeze through it easily too. So I think you've got the beginnings of some good ideas here with regard to color coding on the sections. We found some inconsistencies in wording references, and we found that confusing. And once again, this was just centered mostly on the cycling section. So from a cycling committee perspective, we thought, okay, this has been worked on for a year and a half. Certainly progress has been made. Certainly it's a dense topic and a complex presentation, but we still feel that it needs to be edited more, and we feel that things like the proposed bicycle network map need to be expanded upon before it's ready for release, so to speak, as a final document that we're referencing, especially with regard to grant applications. Now, that being said, I'm also really sensitive to the fact that, for example, I'm sure engineering and planning would like to be able to be leaning on this with regard to ongoing developments. And I certainly think that a lot of what we've got in Appendix B is agreeable to from a cycling committee perspective, for example. But the overarching feeling from that committee, and it's a feeling that I share personally as well, is that we need to still try to work on readability and referenceability within the document, and also expanding upon these items, these map items, and these specific information pieces so that it's a very usable document for grant application purposes and for layperson reference.
Thank you. Just a quick question to engineering. Are more detailed maps available anywhere for the public to, or council to examine?
All our mapping is done in GIS, so we can create new maps that have the names on it quite easily. So we'd be happy to provide that as probably as an appendix would be best, and so I could reference it if that would work for the committee.
Thank you. That's been one of my concerns throughout this review as well, is that the maps, if you're going to publish a printed document, it's very difficult to put a map of great detail in there. If you're going to put it online, Google Earth does a wonderful job of detailed maps. Mr. McCusker.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to reference the comments about the grant applications. As far as the grant applications go, we're not going to send this or a chapter of this in as a part of the grant application. We are currently working on some streetscape designs that are that have been approved in this year's budget as well, which take the transportation master plan cross sections for the roads and turn them into the actual streetscape sort of, I guess they'd be concept view, aerial concept view drawings of what the streetscapes would look like. And this document would be referenced in terms of saying this grant application was approved by council and references our transportation master plan. That's about as far as we're going to go as far as taking this and sending it in as part of a grant application. We'll be using the streetscapes that come out of this as part of that. So there is another iteration of streetscapes that were approved in this year's budget. So there's $25,000, I believe, for that. Okay, so that will probably address that concern.
Councillor Day.
Sorry to disturb your process, but I have a lot to say, and I'm trying not to say too much. But there's a number of maps, for example, the map on page 92 that shows existing bicycle facilities has some inaccuracies. There's the trails in West Havenwood Park from Desmond Drive to VMP, for example. That's a multi-use trail. The map that came before that has some, sorry, I have to flip through here to find all the maps, but there's also maps showing the potential linkages from Veterans Memorial Parkway to Wishart Road, and they're incorrectly labeled. The map shows what should be the Bunker Road connection is on Winthrop Road on that map.
Excuse me, Councillor Day, are you reading the most recent edition of the Transportation Master Plan?
Yes, the one that's included with our agenda.
Which page number then are you referring to for the Wishart Bunkert?
The first map that I referenced is on page 92 under existing bicycle facilities.
Yep.
And there's a number of points. The multi-use trail in West Havenwood Park from Desmond Drive to VMP is not included.
Specifically, sorry.
Oh, well, it's called 106 of 207 on your thingy, but on the page it says it's page 92. So whichever set of page numbers you want to go by, on the attachment under our iCompass agendas, it is page 106 of 207. And on the footer on the page, it says it's page 92. Correct.
I'm sorry, my my agenda package doesn't show the same. Page 92.
I'll show you the quick jump on it. See the little number sign there? Punch that. On the top, you'll get a page number of 207. Go to 92. Or go to 106, pardon me.
Oh, those are your notes.
No, it'll be 106 up there because it's XX 106.
Sorry, I hope I
A little bit of education here, folks.
get you all on
So
the
there's the-
same page. I
Okay,
have
there's 92. Where's
made little
106?
notes of what's wrong with the map. So there's one multi-use trail missing from Havenwood Park. It shows Outlook Park Trail as being a multi-use trail, which it is not. It shows the east side of Havenwood Park having all of its trails be multi-use. They're all done in the green for multi-use pathway. There's only one trail that's a multi-use trail in there, and that goes directly from the end of Winthrop to Veterans Memorial Parkway. And there are links to Latoria Road from Royal Bay that show us little green multi-use pathways, and there's no way you could take a bike up or down those access points. They're very steep, and they have donkey stairs on them.
I believe multi-use is, sorry, to engineering, is multi-use supposed to be all-encompassing, i.e. walking, wheelchair, bicycle, or is it just...
No, it would be all-encompassing. You're right.
Okay, so I would agree with Councillor Day that the number of those are impossible as multi-use trails.
I'm just trying to look up where the other map is.
I think you're referring to page 162, Councillor Day, where is that the one that referenced Bunker Road? Or
Well,
it doesn't
there's
anymore?
also errors on the proposed bicycle network. Because it shows trails in Latoria Creek Park, which those are far too steep for multi-use trails. And the neighborhood bikeway probably would have to be on Pelican. And that's on page 101 on the footer. And wiggle my page to see, it's 115 of 207 in my agenda package. And
Is that the one that says proposed bicycle network?
that's correct.
Okay, so it could be that that is proposed to be a little more multi-use.
Right, but it's too steep. The grades are too much. There's no way it's a multi-use trail. If you're over 10% grade. Sorry, it doesn't help to have been the chair of Parks and Rec when the trails were built. I know them all. And also, it doesn't show Painter Road as having bike lanes, and I would recommend that that would be one area where we should have bike lanes to encourage kids to ride to and from school.
Chair?
I believe the cross-sections on Painter Road later in the plan do show bicycle lanes on Painter. Mr. McCusker?
Yes, yes, Chair. On page 34 of Appendix B, Painter Road shows buffered bike lanes.
Oh, after the appendix?
Page 34 of Appendix B, which is under the top heading, it's 1.12. I'm sorry, I only have the paper copy here.
Sorry, hard to keep up. I have to manually scroll through all the pages. Oh, I see. Yep. I see now. Okay, good. That's good. Just, I found a lot of inconsistencies with the maps in that they, they have arrows. I mean, the color coding is good, but we do have to have our maps show what we actually have.
Thank you. Any further comments or questions from committee? I have a brief comment on the master plan. It's intended to be a very long-term document. It's been based on Colwood's population. It's based on the assumption that Colwood's population will continue to grow. CRD estimates show the population reaching 32,000 by 2038. I believe a more reasonable estimate based on census data would have us reaching this population by 2047. Nevertheless, both show a continued growth, and we have to plan for that growth. Adoption of a plan is necessary to ensure that development cost charges, servicing bylaws, and amenity bylaws meet the requirements of a growing Colwood. However long that growth takes, this plan is largely based on Colwood's official community plan with its defined growth centers and population densities. Thus, as the OCP changes, the plan will have to be amended to reflect those changes, and Council has made a number of density changes in various areas that go outside of what the OCP envisioned. If that continues, then the plan will have, the transportation plan will definitely have to be amended to reflect that. I also believe that an amendment will be necessary when the development of Colwood Corners is decided upon. At that time, we can make other amendments as needed. I really do believe the committee and council should adopt this plan as imperfect as it is, and on the amendment have all of these changes as suggested by Councillor Day and others fixed. I personally find a number of problems with this, the maps being one. The document by itself seems rather lengthy. It exceeds in length our official community plan. There are missing data in the plan. There are a lot of places where percentages are provided. For example, the percentages of transportation choices. A percentage by itself means absolutely nothing. Is it 10% of 1,000 or is it 10% of 100,000? We don't know that. Those numbers don't really reflect what reality is expected to be. For example, if you look at the change in rideshare from 2026, from now till 2026, if we reduce the percentage of automobile trips from 89% now to 75% in 2026, and if the CRD predictions for the number of trips are correct, that's on page 38, we will have a net increase in the number of actual trips by 38%. I don't know that our plan is robust enough to handle that level of traffic increase, and I don't see any plan to really reduce that. There's not a lot of reference to how we go about changing people's, I mean, if you build bike lanes, people will ride bicycles more often, maybe. We also have an aging population, which argues against more bike use. More transit use, as was pointed out, is probably dependent on better transit service, again, which is beyond the Colwood Council's ability to control other than recommending it. So all in all, I feel that this is a very imperfect document. It should be amended at a very close date, and when the Colwood Corners does finally develop, I would suggest we do a major overhaul of the document to reflect all of the changes. For now, there are a couple of very important development bylaws, DCC, servicing, and amenities that have to be amended to reflect what we want in our road network. By failing to do this, we will not be able to make the developers do those changes and collect for them. So I would ask that committee recommend to council that this be adopted, and I would hope that council would adopt this on the basis that it will be amended in the very near future. Having said that, I will bring it back to committee.
Through the chair, this is a huge document, there's no getting around it. But there's some things that I find contentious, but the thing is, it's a discussion document as well. So going forward, we can take all this imperfections and you can apply the microscope to it, and then we can change that as we go. Drawings, what have you. Because as I said earlier, is this a working document or a final document? It's a working document, we're going to progress, plow ahead. This is, to me, the blueprint to go forward. Imperfections, no imperfections. That's why we're having this discussion now. So that's the way I look at it.
Thank you. Further discussion? Councillor Martin?
Sorry, no, I didn't have it. I was just going to recommend that council adopt the transportation master plan.
Thank you. Discussion on the motion? Being none, there's one thing I would like to see changed in the plan. The word vibrant is used 81 times in this document. That's rather excessive. I suggest somebody get a thesaurus and... Anyway, we have a motion on the floor. All in favor? Opposed? One opposed. The motion is carried. Back to the agenda. Next item on the agenda is report by the city engineer on 2014 corporate emissions.
So the the targets, community targets in the OCP are listed at the bottom of page 1 of the report, and these will likely be revisited in the next iteration of the OCP for reasons we'll discuss a bit more later. Our total emissions, the city's emissions that the city's responsible for, what are called our corporate emissions by the province, are West Shore Parks and Recreation, some of our subcontractors, particularly for line painting and branch drop-off, and for street sweeping, and added to our own direct emissions and use. And on the table on page 2, it's called Table 1, you can see that, and in the graph following on the next page, you can see that the city as a corporate body, taking into account the West Shore emissions as well, is doing better than the general community target. So the fact that the community isn't going to meet those targets is not due to the city and its corporate emissions, but in any way we're helping. But when you look to the future, I mean, the city's already achieved the 33% reduction that's targeted for 2020 for the community. But it's actually going to be hard to hold that place, because if you look at the reasons on page 3, the list of reasons why we managed to get that down, I have to say a lot of them were somewhat accidental. We did nothing to create the lighter snowfalls. That wasn't an effort by the city, not directly anyway. And we did, it was an accident that we no longer moved gravels from Lehigh. So in a sense, for this calculation, we were fortunate that the baseline set by the city, 2007, was a very high emissions year for the city because of all the trucking of gravel going on. In regards to community emissions, those are that information is only provided by the province to us every 5 years, and the next year is 2016. So we haven't had a check on that for a while. It's not very likely that we're going to achieve a 33% reduction by 2020. Although I think the community is probably doing better than a lot, because we did actually achieve a 3% reduction through Solar Colwood in building emissions, which is 3% overall through Solar Colwood, but that was over a 4-year span, and the population increase was greater than that over that span, so our total emissions will still have gone up. So it gives an idea how difficult those targets can be to meet. The sewage treatment plant could really help us if it produces zero carbon heat that can be provided to the community. But we don't know yet whether that will actually happen in the community. There will be a lot of, through no effort on our part, there will be a lot of electric car use growth in the future, but it's still a very small proportion of the total. Now, the province originally said that we should be net zero for carbon emissions corporately, and by 2012, I think it was. And the idea was that, knowing that we couldn't actually achieve that directly, that they would allow us to purchase carbon credits through the Pacific Carbon Credit Organization. I can't remember the exact name. Carbon Trust, that's it, thank you. As time went on, the Pacific Carbon Trust, I think, fell out of favor with the provincial government, and so we are now tacitly at least allowed to get our carbon credits by doing projects in the community using the money that would have been spent to buy carbon credits. So, for instance, we have in our budget to buy LED streetlights. We've already done a test with them. They have a very short payback period, and people seem to be pleased with the lighting effect. So we'll be investing in LED lights every year, and that will gradually get our energy bills down for street lighting and also decrease our carbon footprint. In relation to the, and I think there's a graph down here, greenhouse gas emissions by fuel type on page 5. So you can see the electricity that we're tackling with the LEDs is more about our costs rather than the emissions, which are not a significant part of our total emissions, although they are a significant amount of our cost. The other two sources of emissions are fuel for public works, and there's a very limited amount that can be done there. We have been modernizing the fleet a bit, which helps get the average fuel consumption of the vehicles down. We do have 2 electric vehicles in use for business mileage. That's helping a little bit. But of course, there are many vehicles that at this moment cannot be replaced by an electric vehicle. And it doesn't make financial sense, and it's doubtful that it makes environmental sense to replace vehicles that haven't reached the end of their life. So that will take some time to come about. The other large emissions, less than the total fuel, but still significant, is the natural gas used at West Shore Parks and Rec. Now that could be, may well be decreased by this sewage treatment plant. It could be decreased by other means, but it does take all 5 municipalities involved in that to agree to any investment. So that's a tough one to bring about. Looking at financial considerations, you can see that our biggest costs are the electricity and street lighting, and we've talked about that, and again, the fuel. And we've actually saved about $122,000 since 2007 in reduced fuel use. If we had held steady at that fuel use, our bills would have increased over that time by a cumulative total of 122,000. But as I say, a lot of that was somewhat accidental, and modernizing the fleet is not exactly a groundbreaking move, since it's very difficult to buy old cars, and why would you do that to replace old vehicles? You're buying new ones, and somebody else is making them more efficient. The LNG, as I say, is a West Shore Parks and Rec expenditure, which we pay a share of but don't have complete control over. What we're asking is the same as last year. The council reaffirm its 2010 instruction to all staff to constantly seek and report to council on ways to reduce the city's energy costs and greenhouse gas reduction, wherever that can result in a life cycle cost saving, particularly in relation to the use of vehicle fuels and natural gas. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? No public. One public left. Questions from the public? From committee?
Yeah, through the chair. Michael, have they ever done a complete energy audit? I'm assuming they have, of the West Shore Rec Center and City Hall here?
We had one done by BC Hydro at City Hall, and I don't think it was a particularly in-depth thing, but they said for a building of this size and type, our energy use is actually quite good. There are ways to improve it, and we're looking at those, but this isn't really the prime target. Our initial target was the fire hall, because the building inspector noticed that they were using a lot of heating while the doors were open. Mm-hmm. And that has been fixed. In general, the wastage of hot air has been fixed. Mm-hmm. That was done years ago and got their natural gas consumption down quite considerably. But yeah, West Shore Parks and Rec is probably the biggest plum to pick. And I don't believe that they've done a complete audit. They have certainly done some synergy between ice making and heating, but I think that's all within the new arena. They haven't actually done it between buildings, and there's quite an opportunity for cost savings there.
I would think there would be.
Yeah, but it's
a lot of heat. There's a lot of heat recovery from the refrigeration systems and what have you.
But there's a cost to get there, and you have to have the agreement of all 5 owners.
Because this building here, I mean, I'm not going to be technical. It's a constant ventilation system, and there's too much air moving through here. And if it was on a adjustable speed drive or something like that, with a proper DDC system, you could ramp it down, bring it up according to your demand on heat.
Yeah.
And so it's running too much. And I don't know what the rest of the building is like, but I know from here it's like you're moving a lot of air.
Yeah, it doesn't actually run all the time, but it does seem to be in this meeting.
Yeah.
It's possible that the thermostat's been changed.
That's it for me.
Councillor Martin?
Just as a clarification, West Shore Park and Rec is actually implementing that this year, that it was already budgeted, that we're transitioning so that there will be a heat exchange program between the Wanda Fuca ice rink at the top and the pool. And so they're actually putting that in this year.
Fabulous news.
And that was a significant increase in cost instead of just building a new ice machine, because it was about $150,000 more. But we saw that I think it was a 12-year payoff.
Great.
Just a quick question to the engineer. This covers corporate emissions, and I take it that we won't learn about community emissions for another year. Is that correct?
Right, yeah. We can make some guesses as to what's happened since 2011, but I'm absolutely certain it hasn't gone down.
Thank you. May I have any further discussion from committee? I would look for a motion.
So move the recommendation.
Seconder? Okay. All in favor? Opposed? The motion is carried. Next on the agenda, engineer re-proposals for Ocean Boulevard Pump Station Protection Plan. Engineer?
So this, the RFP that resulted in these bids came before Transportation Public Infrastructure earlier in the year. The reason for the RFP is because the pump station has been said by Seabulk Engineering, unfortunately only verbally, it wasn't in the report, that the pump station is at risk of a wave that can be expected to come at some point. But I think there's also we noticed that driftwood is being thrown up. Relatively small bits of driftwood are reaching the sort of the enclosure that's formed by rock around the pump station. So we think it's very timely to have that examined and have that protection upgraded. I don't think it's going to require very much. But it's the other point of this RFP and this project is to map the future for that pump station with the sea level rise that we've been asked to prepare for. We will have to think about some alternatives in the future. We received 3 proposals, and at the bottom of the first page of the report, they're listed with their amounts, and staff analysis was that the KWL proposal covers all of the requirements in the proposal, and we're quite happy that one will give us what we need, and given the fact that it's actually the lowest bid, and it is actually the only one that would fit within the budget as we anticipated it will play out. The budget is $75,000. We've asked to allow for $35,000 worth of work as a result of the study, and that leaves us $40,000 to do the study itself. So that number fits within what we expect the budget to play out as. So staff have recommended that, and my computer's being very slow coming up with the recommendation, but the recommendation is that the Transportation and Public Infrastructure Committee recommend to Council that the contract for the Ocean Boulevard Pump Station Protection Plan be awarded to KWL in the amount of $39,547. And as I say, that is within the budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Baxter. To committee, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through the chair to engineering. I haven't had a lot of experience with these sorts of contracts from this end of the table, but how tied to the budget number are KWL, and how can or is the municipality protected against cost overruns on a KWL side?
The contract that they will sign, which is the MMCD, the Master Municipal Construction Documents contract, says that they cannot do any work which in their opinion is over and above that cost without written approval from the city. And as the representative of the city for the purposes of administering the contract, that would have to come from me, and I would only do that above and beyond the contract amount without coming back to committee and council if it was some sort of emergency. And given that this is merely a study, I can't see any emergency arising. So if something turned up that they said, you know, we found something that needs more work that none of us had expected, it would come back to this committee for approval.
Okay, thanks.
Further questions?
Through the chair at engineering. So the scope is relocate and/or fix what we have right there.
Well, the scope is to investigate, see if any work is needed right now, and then lay out a plan for the coming decades as far as 2100 to increase that protection as long as that seems to be financially feasible, and to consider replacement and when that might have to occur and how much it might cost.
Is there going to be, I think I mentioned before, is there going to be any involvement from members of the public or this committee or whatever with the engineering firm?
There's
I've got strong opinions on a lot of this.
Yeah, there's specifically in the terms of reference, we've allowed for meetings with the general public, because if they're going to do anything on that protection in terms of raising it, there's going to be some opinions from the people who look over that to their sea views, and also to present to the committee.
Further discussion? Not, I will look for a recommendation. Seconder? All in favor? Opposed? The motion is carried. Next meeting will be Monday, July 6th at 6:30 p.m. May I have a motion for adjournment? So moved. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried.